This is the Stephen Mansfield Podcast.
Well, welcome to the Stephen Mansfield Podcast, where we look at our times and our generation through the lens of faith and leadership, character, and history. So good to have you with me. This is the last Stephen Mansfield podcast of 2024. We're recording it in early December, and I'll come back around and do a podcast that starts the new year. But we're going to take a little bit of a break, give you a little bit of a break, and this is the last one we'll do this year. And I want to tell you that as I head into the Christmas season, which if you listen to this podcast and have been for years, you know I'm quite sentimental about. I really enjoy and deepen spiritually and invest myself in relationships and rituals between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then a little bit on into New Year's Day. I believe in rituals. I believe in liturgy. I believe in times of reflection and seasons of reflection. So because I'm a Christian and a little bit of a liturgical Christian, I observe Advent, which is one thing that's happening during what we now call the Christmas season. And then, of course, there's the more traditional American Christmas with Santa Claus and the malls and, Christmas parties and all of that, which is frankly a very different thing from Advent, but I can expand to do both. This is probably true in my life because growing up an Army brat, my parents made Christmas very, very special. Even before I was any kind of devoted Christian, Dad would start to take time off from his military role. We were often overseas. In the first 18 years of my life, we were overseas. I don't know, I've got to go back and count, 6-7 years. And often we were on Army bases, and the Army does a good job trying to make Christmas special because almost everybody on an Army post is away from, family and friends and, hometown and so on. So it was all very sweet. And Mom was great at decorating the house and making food, and Dad would turn into Santa Claus, this aggressive special forces Cold Warrior would turn into Santa Claus, and he'd read from scripture, and we'd drink nog, and we'd sing, and we'd watch the old movies, It's a Wonderful Life and Miracle on 34th Street and all that kind of stuff. And Dad was crazy about the parades, and all of it was very, very sweet. Well, then at the age of 18, I became a Christian. And I got to tell you that all of this became even more important to me because I do believe in a church calendar. I keep an Anglican church calendar on my iPhone, and I am aware of feast days and saint days and holy days. And I like that at Oxford, they don't say, a semester will start in a certain month. They'll say the exams will take place after Michaelmas, that kind of thing. These are old Christian designations for feast days. I love all of that, and I live it, and I pray it, and I get on my knees daily and observe the ancient words, both from Scripture and from the Book of Common Prayer and so on, even though I'm pretty much an evangelical, attend interdenominational churches, and am lightly insanely charismatic. Okay, all of that was unexpected, but nevertheless, there you go. What I'm trying to say is, what I'm heading towards, is that rather than talk about politics in this episode, I'd like to urge you to take this Christmas season very seriously and very deeply. In fact, I urge this every year. Now, we'll help you as we can. We will provide a link for episodes in which I've told the Christmas story, given the history of both Christmas Day and Santa Claus and all of that kind of thing. I've even at times past told the entire biblical Christmas story, and we'll provide links to whatever we still have extant about those broadcasts to help you. But let me tell you that people have a strange orientation on time and global events. They tend to have this feeling that we're going to get past things. You hear it said all the time. I heard it as we were heading into this recent presidential election. I can't wait until this is over. I can't wait until we get past this. And what they're thinking is that there will be a time when we're on the other side of it that will be calmer, more sane, more peaceful. And I wish that was true. And just because I'm a historian and a guy who works in public affairs and what have you, and international affairs, I don't get all sharp tongued and say, well, it's not going to happen. That'll never happen. It's never going to be that way. But the fact is, it's never going to be that way. I've told you before on this podcast that I have often challenged people when they've said, man, I'd just like to have lived at another time. And I'll say, because I'm interested in history and what people are thinking, I'll say, well, when would you have liked to have lived? And they will often name times that were smack in the middle of plagues or smack in the middle of devastation or, during the height of the Cold War or what have you. And those times really weren't perfect. There really have never been perfect times in history. But somehow, because of a movie or maybe because they were living their own life in rural Kansas or something, they thought of a certain period as being better, peaceful, more Norman Rockwell, more Americana. Sorry, those of you who are listening from abroad, that kind of thing. And so they have this idealistic, sentimental idea that somehow there was a better time to live in. And by the way, if we just get past this election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, man, it'll be over and we can wipe our brows and we can take a breath. Well, soon as we do, what happens? Trump starts appointing controversial people. The news is all stirred up. We've got a war ratcheting up in Russia. We've got a war increasing in Gaza. The whole Middle East is just one match from being a tinderbox. I mean, it doesn't settle down. It doesn't settle down. So what we have to learn, and I want to strongly urge this for those of you who have many, many more years to lead families and where you can set certain rituals and patterns and habits in your life. I want to strongly urge you to stop thinking in terms of the times handing us peace. That's not going to happen. The times are not going to hand us peace. We didn't have any more peace on November the 6th than we had on November the 4th, the day before the election. We are ratcheting up in a lot of ways. There's lots of tension. The economy is strong. People are happy. Some folks feel optimistic because they think that Donald Trump is dang near the second coming. Okay, believe that if you want to. But actually, in the world, we've got challenges, and we will probably every day of your life. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm saying the art of living that I want to talk about in this podcast, because, sometimes I don't deal with public affairs. I deal with the art of living in this age. And that's the faith side, perhaps, of our slogan, that we look at our times through the lens of faith. I want you to consider that peace comes through connection to God, and peace comes through rituals, through liturgies that connect us to God, connect us to each other, cause us to simplify, cause us to focus, cause us to quiet our hearts, and allow us to be at peace in the midst of the storm. Some of my favorite stories, some of my favorite little bits of knowledge are from wars where people are just under bombardment, terrible things are going on, but still they have church services, still they have Shabbat meals, still they have mass in a basement, some bombed out basement. Still, they share little Christmas presents woven from, leaves or from thatching in Vietnam during the war, etc. My father had some of those, kept him his entire life. My point is that in the midst of the bombardment, we have to find ways of creating liturgy and ritual that means peace, that perpetuates our faith and our values to the next generation, that makes holy days, which is where we get the word holidays, holy days special. So I am an advocate for taking especially the Christmas holidays from Thanksgiving on up to Christmas. I do it before Thanksgiving because as an American historian, Thanksgiving is so special to me. I'm a Christian. I'm a historian. I love the Puritan Pilgrim story. I love the story of the first Thanksgiving. A lot of it is true. Some of it's been, blown up by the American Turkey Growers Association, But nevertheless, I want to urge you to create, if you don't already have, and if you already have, emphasize liturgy. Rituals. In our home, we used Advent calendars, and every day the kids would open a little window on an Advent calendar and get a piece of candy and read a story from Scripture. And that would go on for months. And we would observe other little fun things, when we baked the cookies and when we did this. We would tell stories, and why are we baking gingerbread cookies of angels, and what do they have to do? Where do they come from? What's their role in the Christmas story? And now Santa Claus, he was a Christian pastor once in the 4th century, right? So who is he and how did he get put into Christmas? And we talk about those things, and we sit and we drink punch. I'm talking about when we were kids. Now I drink something different, but when we were young, I remember we used to drink orange high C. Some of you don't even know what high C is, but it was a punch drink back in the day. And we'd drink that and eat cookies, and our parents would teach us. And my parents weren't even that religious at this point, but they just knew that Christmas was connected to faith. And so we'd have readings from Scripture, and we'd light candles and turn down the lights. And it was all very magical and special for a little boy. And it embedded in my life faith and values and an appreciation even for what my father's role was in the military, trying to preserve religious freedom, trying to preserve democracy, trying to preserve individual freedom, all this stuff. I'm not saying it was part of the faith side, but it made us appreciate why we were behind the Iron Curtain during my teenage years, for example, as a family. So I'm signing off this year, final podcast, final Stephen Mansfield podcast. I want to urge you, and especially you heads of households, because you are in control, moms, dads, I want to urge you to have ritual. I want to urge you to take time, turn off the phones, watch the old movies, take time to read Scripture. It's very easy to find the Christmas stories at the beginning of the 4 Gospels of the New Testament, the first 4 books of the New Testament. And I want to urge you to take time for the liturgies, for the rituals that make a difference. Get an Advent calendar, bake things and talk about why you're baking them, and talk about traditions. And parents, talk about what it was like when you were growing up, what your mom and what your dad did, and talk about the Christmas tree, and learn something about St. Boniface, a missionary to Germany who's the whole reason we hang greens and put up Christmas trees as a sign of victory over paganism, etc., etc., etc. These are easy to find on the internet. I've talked about them for years. You can go back in our archives and find these podcasts. We'll provide links to some of them. I don't think that we're coming to the end of history. I don't think we're all going to die on January 1st. That's not my point. But if we don't learn how to have ritual and liturgy and have peace in the midst of the bombardment, not just of social media and news, but the actual bombardments that are happening in the world and will continue for the rest of our lives, then we'll never have peace. And as a Christian, I think we ought to be embedding these truths into the lives of our children. We will have 5 kernels of corn on each plate at the Thanksgiving dinner. And what's that about? That's about remembering how the Pilgrims suffered and during their starving time got down to 5 kernels of corn per person and some brackish water. We'll remember that just for a few moments. And one of the kids will put those 5 kernels of corn on each plate while the table's groaning with food. And I'll tell a little bit of a story, not too long because the food gets cold. And then we'll pray and we'll remember the starving time and we'll be thankful for our forebears in this country. And I'll even quote from the Mayflower Compact, which said, "We sailed for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith." Now, I want to say quickly, I know I've got Muslim friends listening to this podcast. I know I've got Buddhist friends listening to this podcast. I've got atheist friends listening to this podcast, and you know you are welcome here. And I'm speaking more as a Christian in this particular episode because, of course, my version of liturgy and ritual during the holidays is, of course, more American, Thanksgiving, and more Christian, Christmas. But I urge you to do the same thing. And of course, I urge you to do it with us. Read Scripture with us. Enjoy the Christmas symbols and celebrations with us. These are part of your faith, you Muslim friends, as well. Drink it deep. And you atheist friends, smirk and put up with us if you want to. I understand. But do your own version of ritual that perpetuates faith and join us. Even some of you who are listening to this podcast who are atheists, you say, I like it when you talk about Scripture. I like it when you send us to the Bible. These are words we value even if we don't see them as you do. Okay, fair enough. Jump in is the point. And in the rest of this year, quiet down. Try to simplify. Try to pull back the throttle on your business life. And try to find rituals that cause you to turn yourself to God, turn yourself to Scripture, turn yourself to what you believe and perpetuating it in the next generation, and developing rituals within your family that perpetuate it and cause it to live and celebrate it. And some of you are single, and some of you wonder where you're even going to spend Thanksgiving and Christmas. Well, build your own rituals even at that age. Even when I was single, I would pull guys together from the door. Some of us had to stay in the dorms at our university and couldn't go home. It was a lonely time. So I'd work to make sure that we could go to a restaurant, and then we'd come back and I'd bake. One of the things I bake every year is pumpkin pie. So just pumpkin pie and a cup of nog would make lonely college students who couldn't get home feel the ritual. And I'd light candles and dim the lights in the dorm room or in the house, maybe where we were staying off campus, and turn it into something of a ritual. I still have friends who say that was one of the most special Thanksgiving they ever had. And all it was a few candles, a pie, a lot of love, a mug of nog, and some talking about faith and remembrance, and maybe a prayer or two. Do it. Make it special. Keep it going, because this is what makes life rich and meaningful and godly, even in the worst of times. And soldiers have done this at war. People have done this while under bombardment. People have done it while locked in a basement, while bombs are falling overhead. The little rituals kept faith, kept a sense of God's presence, kept love for each other alive. Do it this Christmas. Do it this Thanksgiving. Do it as you step into the new year. Do it throughout next year. This is important. So may I say to you, Merry, Merry Christmas. May you celebrate, may you enjoy, may you feel the presence of God, may you embrace the truth of Jesus Christ, and thanks for being part of my online family. God bless you.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author, a popular speaker, and a frequent faith and culture commentator in international media. His groundbreaking books on faith and society include The Faith of George W. Bush, The Search for God in Guinness, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men, and Lincoln's Battle with God. Learn more at stephenmansfield.tv.